All right, man, peace. So, I've been getting a lot of requests from brothers for me to speak on this situation with the Lithuanian basketball president who stated that he does not want more than two black men on his team because if there's more than two black men on his team, that they'll form a gang. So now we're going to watch as they speak about this issue, and of course I'm going to chime in.
Meanwhile, Gedvydas Vanauskis, the president of a Lithuanian professional basketball team, has sparked controversy after attributing his team's struggles to having too many black players. Quote, "We've always held a stance that there shouldn't be more than two black players on the team. What happened was that Coach Tomas Pachizis likes to play with black players, to control them, to teach them, to tutor them, and we ended up with 4 players that are black."
Maybe he likes to have multiple black players on his team to tutor them and to coach them, allegedly, because he knows that they're more talented. He knows that there are more things that he can teach them because there are more things that they can do. All right. Normally, when somebody seeks out a certain demographic, it's because they feel like there's more that demographic has to offer. It just is what it is. We already touched on that with Jimmy the Greek.
All of a sudden, they came together to form, how should I put it, a sort of gang. It cannot be that way. No more than 2 black players.
He said they came to form a gang. I wonder if they form like Voltron. It's amazing. I didn't know that Phil Jackson's real name was Gedvydas Vanauskis.
I can say that from my 23 years of experience in this business. Teams don't ever have more than 2 black players because that's when bad things start to take place.
I wonder what he's referring to. Is he referring to team chemistry? Is he referring to the offense not running properly? Is he referring to locker room problems? I would have asked him to please be specific as opposed to getting emotional.
Wow. Stephen A?
Well, clearly it's a very, very racist comment, obviously. It's highly offensive.
But he was being honest. So you should ask him to specify in regards to why he's making the statements that he's making as opposed to getting offended. We know that liberal blacks get offended when Caucasians are honest because most liberal blacks, they want the white man to love them and give them a hug and a kiss on the forehead.
Unfortunately, it's not surprising. There are people who feel this way about black people, and it's not just in the United States of America.
And there are people of color who feel that way about Caucasians too, that they don't want Caucasians around. It is what it is.
The unfortunate part of all of this, in my opinion, one of the many unfortunate things about this statement is that, number one, it's indicative of what some people in America believe.
Many people in America believe that. Many. Almost all demographics view a group of black men, so-called black men, with suspicion. Right? It's very commonplace for anybody who has ever worked in corporate America for them to proactively try to break up any type of cipher between so-called black men, wherever it is. But people of other races, they can get together, they can form a circle, they can talk amongst each other, even in their native language, and nobody gets upset. But when Jerome, Tyrone, and Shaheem get together around the water cooler, they're talking about the basketball game, are you guys on break?
Still. Number two, it gives off I think to a lot of Americans, it would give off the feelings of justification for their own racist tendencies, those who have those tendencies.
I don't think that many people who have racist tendencies feel like they need to be justified, Steve. I think they just feel how they feel.
And so, and number three, and more importantly, or just as important as anything else, it harkens me back to what I said just a few days ago. Unfortunately, when it comes to black folk, people want to exploit the talents that we possess, but far more often than not, the interest lies in an ability and a willingness to control us, as opposed to letting us spread our wings and fly.
Well, Steve, from a business perspective, it's not in anybody's best interest to empower so-called black people. It's only in our best interest. All right. That's the problem with the so-called black man and woman, especially the liberal black man and woman. They're always looking for this type of magnanimity. All right. They're looking for the other races to act as a proverbial Santa Claus. Please empower me. Please bring me up to your level. Right. For the sake of humanism. I thought you had a good heart. How come you won't feel sorry for me and help me? Lend a helping hand. I just want equal rights. Right? These are the type of things that the so-called black man and black woman continue to do that make other races view us with even lesser and lesser esteem. All right? It's time for us to stop looking towards other races for validation. What the so-called black man needs to do if he's facing these type of issues is form his own league. All right? Why is it that so-called black men have to go all the way to Lithuania to play? Form their own league.
If it's people from other ethnicities, there doesn't seem to be this sort of dogged effort to do such things.
Of course not. And I already stated that. But the reason for that is because these other nations sense something different in the so-called black man. They're intimidated, as I stated on the Jimmy the Greek special, and it's genetically pre-encoded in their DNA to remember when they were under our rulership. They don't want to return to that, Steve. It is what it is.
But when it comes to black people, particularly that of black men, it is obviously the case.
I'm happy that he specified black men, so-called black men, because as I've stated repetitively on this channel, you so-called black men are the one that's behind enemy lines, not the so-called black woman. The black woman goes through certain things as well, but she's mostly used against you as a pawn. All right. It's you that they're worried about because you carry the seed. Once again, and I know some of you guys, some of you brothers are not into the Bible, but it tells you in Exodus, the 2nd chapter, Pharaoh told the midwives, when the woman gives birth to a female child, let it live. When she gives birth to a male child, kill it.
This is one of the reasons why we step back and why we could dissect and be critical of the game of a LeBron James or anybody else, for example. One of the things that we should applaud about the modern day athlete, from the LeBron James of the world to the D Wades of the world, a Kevin Durant of the world, a Michael Bennett of the world, a Colin Kaepernick of the world, and others. We have to applaud their social consciousness.
Social consciousness doesn't mean anything, Steve. It's about knowledge. Okay? It's not really about consciousness. All it means to be conscious is that your eyes are open. Right? It doesn't mean that you understand what you're seeing. Like I see a lot of times black people, they have this, so and so is woke. Look, brothers, it's not about being woke. All that is cool. But that's like the first level. That's like kindergarten. Okay, the real issue is culture and understanding the money system, and that's just talking from a carnal level, right? The highest level is the spiritual level, the spiritual understanding, because that's where culture comes in. All right, our people do not have a culture. That's why there's no real unity. So-called blacks are always talking about unity. All right, you can't have unity if you don't have a culture. You got these guys who comment on my videos every once in a while. I disagree with you. We do have a culture. You just might not like it, but it's a culture. Look, bruh. Smoking weed, Air Jordans, hair weaves. That shit is not a culture, bruh. No, hip-hop, that's not a culture. All right? There's a long path and a long road. And a lot of times people say, they ask me, well, like they've asked me in the comments, well, how do we get a culture back? Bro, cultures are instituted the same way that they're taken away, through traumatic events. All right? You're not going to implement a culture. It has to be forced on people through traumatic events. All right? When people are put into captivity or released from captivity, those two events occur traumatically. The overall communal consciousness of the people has to be affected through a traumatic event. That's what changes cultures. That's what makes people say, okay, I'm going to get down with this plan because I don't have any other options. All right? See, niggas like to hear debates. Oh, man. Like a brother asked me if I was interested in debating this dude. What's this dude? Pharaoh? Whatever this cat name is. One of these black woman is God niggas. Brothers, I have no interest in debating anybody. Brothers like to see that too much. All right? And nothing gets resolved. It's a whole lot of nonsense. All right? It's the same way the so-called conscious debate circuit is nothing more than a bunch of guys that's basically intellectually masturbating into a damn microphone, talking about back in 753 BC, and we were in Kemet, and look, brother. History is extremely important. That's why I delve into history on this channel, but it has to be put in the context of implementing a culture and understanding accurately why we are in this condition, how we got here, how we gonna get out of it. How are we gonna get out of it? Well, brothers, you already know my stance is through the scriptures, and I'm probably going to start a Bible series very soon. It's taken me a while to meditate on it if I wanted to, because I know it attracts a lot of, to be quite frank with you, idiotic spirits and demonic spirits, but I'm probably going to start it relatively soon. Because that's really the main thing, especially in these last days. Brothers have to understand a lot of the provisions that they have coming down. All right. Right now, they want to change the money system from electronic, and soon they're going to start to implement it in the form of that RFID chip. All right. It's just that they have to stage something traumatic to totally pull the fiat money out of circulation. But let's get back to Steve. Let's see what he's talking about.
Their willingness to step out front and speak about the things that ail us as a society. It was beautiful when the racial epithet spray painted on the gate of LeBron James' Brentwood home, and
allegedly
in the aftermath of that.
I still haven't seen no footage, no photos, no nothing. I can't remember ever seeing or ever hearing a story about an affluent celebrity having that type of vandalizing happen to their property and not seeing any proof of it.
That he came out during a press conference and he said it's just a reminder of what we deal with. That no matter how far you climb, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much of an iconic figure you are, no matter what a celebrity you are, when you are black, you are going to be reminded of that reality. So
if you say that black is beautiful and you're black and proud, how is that a bad thing to be reminded of that? The only thing that anybody can remind you of, if they're quote unquote racist towards you, is how jealous they are. That's if you're truly proud to be black as you claim.
And as a result, you're going to have to deal with the fallout from that. This is something that black individuals, especially black men, not only black men, but especially black men, because black women go through a lot too. But black men wake up with every single day of our lives. People look at us, and regardless of what our gifts may be, regardless of how we conduct ourselves, regardless of how successful we are and how people are able to monetize our efforts and our exploits into something that's beneficial for themselves and everybody else, not just us, there's this overwhelming willingness and penchant to keep us in line and keep us under control. And what we heard here is that it's not just in America, it's everywhere.
Why wouldn't it be there if it's here? I mean, that country is what? Probably 95% Caucasian. America's only a little over 60% Caucasian. So why wouldn't it be there? All right. The scriptures tell you, is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? All right. Why would you expect people who are able to monetize our talents to treat us as equals when they already have us in the capacity of servants? All right. Your statements don't make any sense, brother.
It's incredibly sad, but far from shocking.
This guy, what's his name? The team president, Vainauskas, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's an idiot. What an idiot. You moron. A stupid jackass. What kind of a thing is that to say? I mean, and let me tell you what kind of a stupid jackass this guy is.
This guy, he's trying too hard. This Caucasian Jew liberal, Max Kellerman. All right. He thinks he does protest too much. He probably thinks the same thing. For those of you who don't know, Max Kellerman started out back in the early 90s as a Caucasian trying to be a rapper. Right? He's from New York City. He was trying to be a rapper back in the early 90s. You can YouTube him. His brother was also trying to be a rapper. His brother allowed a boxer to stay in his home with him, and the boxer ended up killing him. All right. Max Kellerman's brother was killed by a boxer who happened to be a so-called black man that he let stay in his home, and the boxer, for whatever reason, killed him. All right. But Max Kellerman, he's trying too hard here, which oftentimes white liberals do. But let's see what else he has to say.
You stupid jackass.
I mean, come on. Right now, he's not showing any form of eloquence or ability to articulate any real point. He's just levying ad hominem attacks, which tells me that he really doesn't have any real argument or any real statements to make.
Let me tell you what kind of a stupid jackass you are. I hope you can hear me. You know, people used to accuse the 80s Celtics. I'll go back to that Magic Bird documentary, Stephen A., Best of Enemies. The 80s Celtics of being somehow of pandering to Boston fans with white players. Red Auerbach, the GM, one of the greatest coaches and GMs in the history of basketball. A
Caucasian Jew who proactively recruited great so-called black ball players in the late 50s throughout the 60s to push the socialist agenda.
Gave the job, the head coaching job, the first head coaching job to a black man, to an African American, Bill Russell. First in any major American team sport. First black starting five on the Celtics. Later on, when he had Bird and McHale, it wasn't because they were white, it's because they were the best. That's why. So people who criticized Red Auerbach weren't paying attention to the facts.
And Red Auerbach, practitioner of a believer in the Talmud, as this man Max Kellerman is, practitioner in the Kabbalah. You know, these are people who adhere to certain belief systems, as above, so below, mixing together of opposites. That's why normally wherever you see the Caucasian Jew, you'll see an agenda to mix so-called black and so-called white and everybody else together. All right. That's one of the tenets of the Kabbalah, right? Or as they call it, the so-called tree of life. But we'll cover that later.
He was progressive precisely because...
Progressive is a code word for liberal/socialist.
He judged people on the content of their character, on their abilities.
On their ability to make him money.
On what they could do. He didn't prejudge them. He judged them based on the merits. So this moron in Lithuania doesn't want to do that. You can't have more than 2 black players on a team, he says, or they form a gang.
Well, I have a question for you, Mr. Max Kellerman. How many so-called black men are in the upper level positions at ESPN? I'm not asking how many so-called black male anchors you have. I'm asking how many so-called black men do you have as chairman of the board, as executives at ESPN? Most of those same provisions are still held throughout corporate America, almost wholesale. All right? People do not like to see so-called black men in groups of 3 or more. That constitutes, as the Lithuanian team president stated, a gang. That is a worldwide conclusion that the other nations have come to. Once again, it is because they are genetically predisposed to view the so-called black man as a potential authoritarian. They remember when so-called blacks ruled over them for over 1,000 years. All right? This is why they do it.
That's been his experience. Right, because none of the best teams of all time in basketball have had more than 2 black players on the court at the same time or on the team.
Such
Not
a joke.
Like the reigning champion Golden State Warriors or their adversary, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I'm sure that if his team was scheduled to play those teams, and he would recruit more black players. Seeing as he's in a European league, I don't think that he cares.
Or the 72-win Bulls teams, or the Dream Team that stomped out planet Earth in basketball, all the countries, including the countries who had mostly non-black players or players of African descent, I guess.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what to say. And this is why I say, for some of you brothers who ask me, why do I say so-called black? It's because those terms are not really relevant, right? Afro-American, African-American, black, all that stuff is nonsense. All right, those are not real terms. Real terms are your tribal terms or racial designations. The term race means seed. All right? So that's why in the Bible, if you ever read the Bible always gives you the designations for different nations of people based on their progenitor, meaning their forefather. All right? So whoever your forefather is, that's what you are. That's what the term race literally means. Okay?
I guess. So the real stupidity of the comment is he's so clouded by his own racism and by his own, and so handicapped by his own ignorance that he actually allows that to put him at a competitive disadvantage. And that's the real lesson, not just the pernicious effects of racism, sexism, of any kind of exclusionary kind of ideology.
Here goes his liberal rants, his socialist rants. As I've stated in the past, they've used the so-called black man and his plight, quote-unquote plight, which a lot of it is self-generated by the so-called black man, because he doesn't want to humble himself before his power, which is what's necessary for us to initiate bringing back our culture, which is what's going to unify us, which is what's going to allow us to stand on our own 2 feet. Because of these problems, we're left at the whims of duplicitous liberal Caucasians like this man here, liberal Caucasian Jews, who behind closed doors oftentimes are just as quote-unquote racist, if not more, than the honest Caucasians that they rail against. All right, believe me, this man was raised up under the Talmud. If you guys have read the Talmud, it tells you that it's okay to rape a boy 9 years or under, or 7 years old or under. I can't remember which one. All right, but he is a practicing Jew, right? Or at least he claims to adhere to many of the principles. I remember him saying that he does try to speak Yiddish whenever he can. All right.
It's not just the damage it does to the group who's being excluded. Of course, that is the largest moral issue. But even if you want to take it from a purely kind of self-serving point of view, you're handicapping your own organization.
They don't care. It's about self-preservation. It is the law of the land. All right. As I've stated before, I don't really like those terms, racism or white supremacy. These are people who are trying to maintain their own genetic, their own DNA. They're trying to preserve their seed. All right. They really don't care. Lithuania, for those of you who don't know, in the medieval time period, they were constantly at war with the Teutonic Knights, who were the Black Knights of Germany. All right. So it's no wonder they oftentimes would form a coalition with Poland to war against the Teutonic Knights of the Holy Roman Empire, who were so-called black men. All right. And we forced the ways of the Catholic Church on them, and then they threw off those shackles and they went back to paganism, and then we forced it back on them, and eventually they conquered the Teutonic Knights. I believe it was in the mid-1400s. I'm trying to remember what the brother's name was, who was the head of the order of the Teutonic Knights when they fell. It'll come to me.
You are warping the relationship between the job and the merits. You're creating inefficiency. It's not a good idea. Exclude women, exclude various minority or ethnic groups. At your own peril, you will fall behind. You will lose. These decisions should be made based on the merits, and this moron clearly doesn't understand.
You said
As I've stated before, the reason why you'll always see the Caucasian Jew at the forefront of these liberal movements is because they adhere to the Talmud and the Kabbalah. All right. Once again, the Talmud is what's known as Jewish mysticism. All right. These are things that our people learned while we were in Babylon. OK, our people learned a lot of these practices while we were captive in Babylon. After leaving Babylon, these led to certain splinter groups which I'll cover later on when I finally get to some of these historical videos. And the Kabbalah was taken up by the so-called Caucasian Jews when they converted to quote-unquote Judaism in the 8th century AD. All right, they were already dealing with ritual pederasty and pedophilia, as well as zoophilia, which is sex with animals, while they were in the caves of the Caucasus Mountains back in the 6th, 7th, 8th century AD. As I've already stated, they were known as Khazars, or Khazars, meaning swine. All right, this is why most of the Caucasian Jews, they trace their lineage from where? From Poland, from Lithuania, from the Russian steppe, from Russia. All right, this is where they really come from. They are not the so-called people of the book, and they know it already. But it is what it is. Let's continue on.
Said it perfectly. Stephen A., I have one question for you. If you're these players that are playing for this man and you know how he feels, he's in a position of power, aren't you going to boycott the league and leave?
You want to get the hell out of there. You certainly don't want to play for a man like that. The other thing is that...
Well, hopefully they have the financial ability to get the hell up out of there, Steve. Let's be for real. Are you willing to leave ESPN if it comes out on tape record that some of your executives have made racial statements or quote-unquote racially inflammatory statements? Are you going to leave ESPN tomorrow? Or are you going to say, well, you know what? We're going to handle this in-house. You got the unmitigated gall.
Again, you see those comments and how divisive they are and how offensive that they are. And it just heightens the level of awareness as we sit here in the United States of America, the greatest country in the world, and we speak about unifying and not being as divisive. So this is something that highlights and elevates the level of importance in that regard as well.
I don't know why these people are constantly talking about not being so divisive in America. I mean, a lot of so-called people of color and so-called blacks, they're so delusional. They have this coastal mindset, the East Coast, the West Coast, which is mostly where people of color are located along the coastal lines of America. There's entire states in middle America where a black face better not even be shown, or your ass is going to end up hanging from a tree. All right. Like I've mentioned this before. You guys could buy a book called Sundown Towns. All right. It's about cities in middle America where if a so-called black man is seen there after sundown, he will be killed and he will be hung from a tree. All right. I can't remember the author's name off top, but the title of the book is Sundown Towns.
The only other thing that I'd like to say, just to piggyback off of Max's comments, because people are going to hear what Max just said and possibly try to hold him accountable. Well, let me say this to you. You need to hold both of us accountable, because I echo Max's sentiments when he called the man an absolute jackass.
Of course you do, because you're emotionally driven. And as I've stated, you said that you repeat his statements. Why is that? Because as I've stated repetitively, the liberal black follows after the liberal white. All right. Well, I see this played out every day. We just saw it played out here.
Yes, it's not just Max Kellerman saying it. It's me saying that as well. It's a sad commentary. It is what it is. But thank God that there are a lot of people in the United States of America that certainly don't feel that way. But we do.
And there are even more that do feel that way. All right. There are even more that do feel that way. And any so-called black man who's ever worked in corporate America knows that if they see more than two black men speaking about something, they get suspicious, they get aggravated. Any man who's ever worked in any capacity in corporate America, any man of color knows that. All right?
Racism is a problem, and it's not just in the United States of America, and this is the kind of thing that highlights it. This is what black men go through every day, and just because people are not as overt with it as they used to be during the civil rights era and beyond, we've seen enough of it. We're seeing some of it now, and it hasn't gone away, and this is just the latest level of proof that's been provided to us about the plight of black folks. Everybody's talking.
The real plight of so-called black folks is that our people don't want to be self-defined. We want to be defined by everybody else. That's why we get so caught up in what some dude from Lithuania said about so-called black basketball players. All right? I mean, come on.
Black men, we sit there and say being black is another full-time job, just in case y'all don't know. That's what black folks say all the time. Being black is another full-time job.
Oh, I don't call it a full-time job, brother. I call it a blessing. All right. Every day when I look in the mirror and I see what the Most High blessed me with, I'm good with it. All right. I can't be validated by anybody else. But now let's see what else they got to say about this issue.
Yeah, and it's disturbing to hear the hate out loud.
Oh, you just saying that because Jalen Rose is, he's a basketball player. You got a basketball player taking it to the hole on you. That's the only reason why you caught up in that bullshit. Cut it out.
Guy's a loser. I just want to read. He did put out an apology. I almost don't want to read it.
Who cares?
We know how
his apology.
We know how he
claims
truly
that he was
feels.
talking about foreign
Do you want to hear the apology or no? Do we not even want to give him the time?
You know what? No disrespect to either one of y'all.
Yep.
This is First Take, okay? I'm making an executive decision. His apology can kiss my what. Don't air the damn apology. Leave it alone.
I'm with you on
I care less about his apology.
We know what the real deal is. All right, let's...
Well, if he was a real journalist, he would have read the apology and reacted to the apology. But as Max kind of snuck in, he states that the coach claimed that his statements were in reference to foreign-born players. That's very, very interesting because, once again, as I've stated repeatedly, all so-called black people are not the same. All right? The other nations view the so-called black man of the captivity as being different from other people of color. All right? That's why I did a video before for a lot of you black men who love to claim Kemet or Egypt. All right? You are not the descendants of the ancient Egyptians, so you need to stop trying to claim their history. All right? The descendants of the ancient Egyptians are known today as the Nilotic peoples. All right? The Nuer, spelled N-U-E-R peoples. The Dinka, the Maasai. All right? Those are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians. They practice things like blood drinking, scarification, worshiping cow dung. These are all things that were practiced by the ancient Egyptians. That's why the scriptures tell you, the book of Leviticus in the 17th chapter and the start of the 18th chapter, the Most High says, these are the things that the Egyptians behind you are doing and that the Canaanites in front of you are doing. Do not do these things. And when you read the list of things that are being done, he names things like scarification, tattooing, incest, child sacrifice, blood drinking, things of that nature. That's why what they're doing today, they were doing 3,000 years ago, so-called black man. So stop trying to steal their culture because it's not yours. But anyway, that's it on that. Peace.